This is step 4 of the Dancing Toothless Meme Crochet Amigurumi tutorial. If you haven't watched the first 3 steps, please go back and do them first. For the first part of this tutorial, we're going to make all the bumps that we need to attach to our dragon. We'll make the ears, the ones that go down the side of the face, the ones that go at the back of the head, and the ones that go across the top of the head, down the back, and the slight variation that goes on the tail. To make the head horns, we're going to make a magic ring, but it's not going to be a regular magic ring. We'll do 2 single crochet and then 2 half double crochet, then 2 double crochet. You can see that that's making it step up, and then a treble for the center, so that's yarn over twice, pull on some yarn, then pull through 2, and through 2. Oops, there's the last one. Then 2 double crochet again, stepping down the other side, and then 2 half double crochet, and 2 single crochet at the end. Snip off some yarn, but leave a long tail because we'll use that to sew onto the head. And pull your magic ring closed tightly. It won't close completely because there's just too many stitches on there to make it close completely. And there it is. That's the largest one we'll make. To make the 4 side bumps for the side of the head, make another magic ring. We'll need to make 4 of these and do 2 single crochet, 2 half double crochet. That's 1, 2, and then another 2 single crochet. So this is going to be a much smaller shape. Then snip off a yarn tail. Remember, we need it to sew it onto the head. And pull your magic ring closed. We're not sewing any of these sides closed. We need it to have a flat side to attach to the side of the head. To make the horns for the center back of the head, we'll do another magic ring. And this time we'll make 2 single crochet. And then we'll step up to 2 half double crochet. And then do 1 double crochet, then 2 half double crochet, going back down the other side now, and then 2 single crochet. And snip off a yarn tail, pull the yarn through that loop, and then close your magic ring. The bumps for the top of the head and down the back are a magic ring with 5 single crochet. It's quite simple. So just do 5 single crochet. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To make the magic rings for the bumps on the back of the tail, do the same as this magic ring, only the bump at the top of the tail has 7 single crochet in its magic ring, and the bump below has 6 single crochet in its magic ring. We've made all the parts we need. All we need to do now is to stuff the body and sew on all the parts. You need to fill your body quite firmly, especially if you want your dragon to stand up. Here's my finished filled body. It needs to be about this full. Next, you'll need to sew on the legs. The position of the legs is between the 2nd and 3rd rows at the bottom and up to the 6th row at the top. Position the legs immediately under the arms but slightly to the rear, and sew on with small stitches roughly the same size as your crochet stitches. To end off, I take the piece of yarn through to where the tail will be attached, and after I've finished the other leg, I'll pass its yarn through to this point and tie those 2 pieces of yarn together. Next, attach the other leg to the other side. This is where I've tied the yarn tails together and it will be hidden by the tail. The tail is attached 3 spaces away from the center at the bottom, over top of the knot we just tied. So sew on your tail now. The next thing to do is sew the bumps on the tail. This is the method I use for securing all of the magic rings. Take the piece of yarn coming from the center of the magic ring and just sew it into place. It's not holding it there securely, it's just holding it in position so you can sew. Then use the other yarn tail to sew on the magic ring. So first of all we sew into one end and sew into the end of the magic ring as well, securing that end of the magic ring. Then sew back in through the top of the tail and down to the opposite end of the magic ring, remembering it has a flat or semi-flat bottom. Then sew through the 2 points at the opposite end of the magic ring there, and sew that back into the tail. Then sew up through the magic ring again, and sew down into the tail, but this time exiting in the middle of the magic ring. So up through the magic ring again, and down into the work, in this case the tail. Sew through one more time, just to secure it firmly, and in the next stitch we'll end. Insert your yarn so that it will come out the same hole that the piece of yarn coming from the center of the magic ring is coming through, and tie them together. Then you can hide the yarn tails by sewing them down into your work. Sew the second magic ring immediately below the one we just sewed on. I chose to sew the top and bottom jaws of my toothless dragon together, and it's easier to do that before you sew on any of the bumps. First, align the mouth neatly so that the lower jaw and upper jaw are exactly over each other. Then sew just in from the edge, sewing straight through the top and bottom jaw. Make sure your needle passes through a gap, a space, one of the stitches, so that you can put your needle straight back into that stitch and then skim lightly between the 2 layers of crocheting towards another stitch a little bit further forward. And then you'll insert your needle into that same hole again. So we're trying not to catch any of the stitches from the outer layers of the mouth. So pass it back into that hole and straight through into a space in the top of the head. And then do the same thing again, back in the same hole and skim forward between the layers of stuffing and the stitches, forward a little in the head, and then straight back down through into the mouth. So do that in a U shape the whole way around the head, but don't go too close to the edges. We want to make it look like it's closing its mouth on purpose, not like it's got its mouth sewn shut. When you've finished, the face should look much like this. Sew the larger magic ring ear horns onto the edges of the head, and you can sew through that part that we sewed the back flap shut. That way it gives it something to secure to, and it hides the stitches that we used to sew it shut. Use the same method that I showed you for sewing on the tail. Sew one end first, then across to the other end and secure in the middle. When you've finished, exit through the same hole you used to secure the head with that middle yarn tail, and tie the 2 tails together. Then you can sew the yarn tails down through the head to where they'll be hidden by the head joining to the neck. Next, sew on the 2 bumps that go between those 2 ears or horns in the center of the head at the back. They go just behind those first 2 that we've sewn on. They should look like this when you're done, sitting slightly behind the first 2 we sewed on. Next, we'll sew the first 2 flaps down the side. I waited to sew the second flaps down until after I had sewn the head to the body. The bumps should look much like this when you're done. Look at my mess of yarn tails. I'll divide them in half, tie them into a knot, and then snip them off before attaching the body and the head. Next, attach the small bumps to the head, find the centre, and attach them with roughly 3 rounds between each bump. Now it's time to sew on the head. Check the position of the head and neck very carefully, and when you're satisfied, it's time to start sewing. So that looks perfect to me, so I'll start sewing that closed there. And in no time, there'll be only 2 things left to do. One is to sew the bumps on the back of the body, and the other is to sew the second set of bumps down on the side of the head. Now it's time for a final check. How do you like your gorgeous little dragon? It should have 8 bumps around the back of its head. You should have 3 bumps across the top of the head, 3 down the back, and 2 on the tail. Congratulations, you made him. Well done.